folks, Tom Vasel here, and I'm starting a new series called 40 Years of Great Games. This year in September, I'm turning 40 years old, and so I thought it'd be fun to look at the past 40 years of gaming, starting with the year I was born, 1976, and find my 10 favorite games from each year. Well, that didn't work out as well as I wanted to because I didn't find 10 games from every year. In fact, it wasn't until 1995 where I could find 10 games for each year. And even in the 70s and 80s, I was forced to put games on my list that I thought were simply okay at best. And I'm really glad that we have great games now. There are so many fantastic games that come out over a year. Although there were some fantastic games in the 70s and 80s, those years were not as plentiful, so I'm combining some of those years. So today we're taking a look at 1976 to 1979, and in fact, there's no games from 1976 and only one game from 1978. At the same time, some amazing games did come out this time, but let's start by the mediocre ones first. Number 10 from this time frame is Vagabondo. In Vagabondo, you are essentially placing tiles on the board. It's almost like a kind of the opposite, in a sense, of a very popular game that came out later, Blokus or Bloku. And you're putting these kind of Tetris-style pieces on the board, and you can't touch your own color. So like I said, the opposite of this game, and scoring points as you place them out. It's a decent game. Let's move on to number 9. Number 9 is Pass the Pigs. Now this game is still around. In fact, they're about to come out with a giant version of this game. It's not that impressive of a game. You are simply rolling some pigs, and depending on how they land, you score points, but certain ways that they land will make you get no points and end your turn. So it's essentially just another push your luck game. And I don't really play this game, but I probably have played this game 50 to 100 times when I was a kid because it was just that much fun to roll these pigs. And there was always that if you get the two pigs on top of each other, you automatically lose. And I thought, does that ever happen? And then I did see it happen. Silly, silly game, but hey, it's on the list, 1977. 1978, the only game from that year is my number 8, and that's This Game is Bonkers. This Game is Bonkers is not a great game. You roll dice, land on space, and do what that says. But This Game is Bonkers had a very unique thing which I liked, and that's where you could change the spaces to do different things. You could modify the spaces, and the game really did turn out to be a bonkers-style game. But that cool concept, which almost seemed years ahead of its time, and in fact, we don't see that being done as much today, but it was a neat concept, and for that, it makes my list. Number 7 is Skirrid, a weird name, S-K-I-R-R-I-D. This is from 1977, and this is kind of like a souped-up Vagabondo, again placing tiles on the board, but you're covering up numbers, which get you points, and you have tiles with numbers on them. And as the game goes by, you get more and more points. You can sacrifice a piece by placing it upside down. You only get half points, but the next person can't touch that tile. The box is gigantically enormous, ridiculous sized box, but kind of a precursor to things come putting tiles on the board and scoring points. It was enjoyable. Number 6 for 1979 is Wizard's Quest. When I was a kid, I had an Avalon Hill catalog, and I would look at all the games, and Wizard's Quest always made me drool. It looked so amazing. This Risk-style game, but there were these darkness trolls that just multiplied all over the place. I played it. Not as great as I thought it would be. Components are pretty low quality, but it is unique. You are a Risk game trying to control the different kingdoms, and then there's this basically neutral force that is expanding and can make everybody lose, and I played games where that certainly has happened. But I love the theme, and this game gets points for me just wanting it so desperately as a kid. Number 5, okay, now we're into actually good games, is Ogre. Ogre came out in 1977. A few years ago came out the Super Deluxe version, and in fact, I did not play it to that Super Deluxe version, and I was surprised looking at that Super Deluxe version at how very simple the game was, because the original game came in a small plastic bag. Ogre, one person controls a giant ogre machine, and the other players are attacking it with tanks and all sorts of things. I really like that idea. It makes for some of my favorite science fiction books. I like the idea of one big thing against a whole bunch of smaller ones. It works well. It's not super deep. It looks deeper than it is, but it is a fun tactical little war game, or tactical huge game if you got the giant upgraded version. Number 4 from 1979 is Awful Green Things from Outer Space. This is a 2-player game from Steve Jackson in which one person has a crew on a spaceship that's being invaded by awful green things. The awful green thing player is trying to expand and get all over the ship as fast as they can. The other player is trying to figure out what exactly kills these aliens? Is it the fire extinguisher? And each time they grab one of the weapons on the ship, they'll hit the alien. It might make the alien double, or it might actually kill the alien. They're not sure until the first time they try something. And then after that, it's like, oh, that worked. Let's find more of that weapon. Or that didn't work. Let's never use it again. A cool asymmetrical two-player game, which almost feels like it's before its time. A cool game. Awful Green Things from Outer Space. Number 3, also from 1979, is Dune. Come on now. You knew this one had to be on the list. Dune, which brings that universe to life. Now, this was rethemed and updated and produced by Fantasy Flight a few years ago, called Rex, where they took it out of the Dune universe because the people who own the estate are very evilly not allowing that game to be reproduced. And Rex is a fine game, but it did work better with the Dune universe. This game works best with 6 players. Each player has a different faction. All the factions have different unique abilities, sometimes a different way to win. The Harkonnen feel as evil as they should be. The Fremen feel as wild as they could be. The Atreides, just the different factions work well. It is a long game. It probably needs to be streamlined a little bit. Rex did streamline it some, and the streamlining rules were better, but still that Dune feeling. This group of designers who made Dune, it's an amazing style game, and I applaud them for that, and it's not the only game of them on today's list. Number 2 is Reifenbreit. This is a bicycle racing game, which I still have in my collection, and it's still one of my favorite racing games because you control 4 bike racers in this game, and these cyclists are going around a track, and you roll dice and move them. But you can draft, you can use cards, and you can follow other racers, and you need to get all your racers. It's silly, it's fun, it plays in a reasonable amount of time. I just love this game. I'm still kind of surprised that it has never actually hit the US in any kind of release, but it's pretty cheap to pick up in Europe, and it's a great game that I'll still gladly pull out and play. And you can even look, I did a Tom vs. the Internet version of this sometime if you want to see how a game plays out. And my favorite game from 1976 to 1979, which came out in 1977 and is still my favorite game of all time, is Cosmic Encounter. That boggles my mind that Cosmic Encounter is almost 40 years old and is still an amazing game. It's gone through many different publishings, Eon and Mayfair. I believe there was even a Games Workshop version at one point, Avalon Hill, and now the Fantasy Flight version, which is easily the best version of the game. Cosmic Encounter is a fantastic game that broke every rule in gaming, used no dice, was special powers against other players. I could talk for a very long time about how great this game is, but I do want to say that I'm just so impressed that it came out in '77. I played this game for the first time maybe 10 years later, in 1987, I think, when I was 11 years old or so, and just fell in love with the game instantly. Couldn't believe the aliens. I thought, wow, the Macrons are overpowered. No, wait, the virus is overpowered. No, ooh, the pacifist is overpowered. And then there were expansions, and I never played them until many years later. I got a chance to play the game again, fell in love with it. This game was one of the defining games of my childhood. It's been one of the defining games of my life. It is an amazing game. All right, folks, this is the beginning of the top 40 years of gaming, or the best games in the past 40 years, or whatever we're calling this list. Check, what are your favorite games from 1976 to 1979? Tell me in the comments. Tell me what I missed. I'm probably not going to go back and try most of these games because, well, there's so many new games that are coming out that are better, but you never know. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.